All right, 20 minutes after 9 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. This next conversation is so intriguing to me. Have you ever had somebody or read about somebody who had a near-death experience and they see things, they see lights or a tunnel, or they see somebody who has passed away and they know that person, and then they come back and they tell about it. What is that? I mean, are we really getting a peek into the supernatural or into the afterlife, or is that our brains playing tricks on us? Dr. J. Lombard has looked into this somewhat. He's an internationally acclaimed neurologist. He creates solutions for brain health and intractable neurological disorders. He's the co-founder and creator of the Genomind, which is a medicine company utilizing genetic testing to improve neuropsychiatric conditions, including Alzheimer's, autism, and depression. And he's the founder of TEDMed. His book is called Mind of God. Fascinating stuff. Neuroscience, faith, and a search for the soul. Good morning, Dr. J. Lombard. What a fascinating topic. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. I'm not the founder of TEDMed, just to be clear. Okay. But thank you for all the accolades. I appreciate being on your show this morning.
All right. Well, thank you for being on. Where are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from D.C. I'm at a medical conference today called IFM, which is all about a lot of the stuff that we're talking about in the book as well. So it's really a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I have a couple of stories. I mean, I won't bore you or take much time, but when my uncle was dying, he saw my grandmother. He said she was standing there in the room. Who knows? I mean, and then he died like a day later or something like that. Yep. We hear these stories all the time. What's going on with that?
Well, what's going on is that there's a tremendous ability and capacity that our brains have that we are really not very much in touch with. But we do get sort of glimpses of these deeper thresholds of our brain's perception, particularly during, catastrophic illnesses, God forbid, or during spiritual experiences where a part of ourselves is opened up to an alternative reality that we otherwise don't experience. And the book is really about what does that actually mean? Why do we have the capacity for those experiences? Are those experiences real, or are they illusions? And does it really matter whether it's made up or an illusion? Because obviously the information is relevant, otherwise our brains would not have that experience at all.
It is interesting when we think of what exactly is reality. If you have a dream, I've had these, we've probably all had these, where some dreams just feel so real, and other dreams don't quite feel as real. But when you wake up, it wasn't real, but yet the memory of it is very real, right?
Of course. And, what we have to understand is that as much as a neuroscientist as I am, people need to understand that all reality is a construct of our brains. Everything that we experience is essentially something that our brain is reprocessing from something other than ourselves. So our dreams, our memories, our thoughts, our belief systems are all in many ways self-constructed, but the goal is to understand, why is that the case, and what is those messages actually intended for. So let me just give one really mind-blowing example of this. I was at a conference last week because I'm on the road a lot, and I heard a wonderful speaker who wrote a book called The Brain That Can Change Itself. It's all about this concept of neuroplasticity. How do brains change? Because as a neurologist, we're very much fatalistic. People have brain injuries. We're like, oh, sorry, there's really not a lot we can do about this. And this researcher was showing that there are very innovative technologies that help the brain to regenerate. So the next day I was seeing a patient, and I was describing this technology to a woman who had a very severe head injury, had been intractable for 5 years, and she starts crying. And I said, what's wrong? I mean, is this something that I told you that is scary or bad or what? She goes, last night I prayed for the first time in my life to my father, and my father came to me in a dream and said, this is going to help you. And it's just so, you talk about these mystical experiences. Well, I experienced this firsthand just like less than a couple of weeks ago. And, what is that? Exactly what you said. What does that mean? How do those things actually occur?
Wow, that is fascinating. But do we have any conclusions, or are we still? Is everything still a theory? I mean, in science we call it theory, and in religion we call it faith. But in both cases we're not sure.
Well, the reality is that all of science is faith-based in some sense, meaning that we know that when we start, really examining reality at the deepest level in terms of physics and quantum physics, that reality is subjective. It changes based upon our perception of it. And this is something that drove people like Einstein and the early physicists really quite crazy, baffling. So there is really no objective reality. The reality is essentially what our brains perceive, and that is a very difficult thought for people to get their heads around. But it doesn't mean that there's moral relativism. I think the flip side of that is, well, if reality is always subjective, you're not real, and I could just as easily punch you in the face, and it doesn't matter because your reality is just, it doesn't exist. It's purely subjective. So I think we have to be very careful when we make assertions that reality is subjective, understanding what we mean by that.
Does the book explore things that we can then use in a practical sense? Are we able to take some of the information and perhaps become happier or less worried or something of that nature?
Absolutely. And that's a great question. I think that the first goal of the book is to really people to ask the question, right? What is their belief? How do they know if their beliefs are real? And the second question to ask is there purpose in a person's existence? That to me is the fundamental question that we all need to ask ourselves in every facet of our lives, is to understand that lives have purpose and that there is meaning of our lives. We create that meaning, but we have the opportunity to do that. And I think just by asking that question, what is the purpose of your life, leads to very, very fundamental changes in how people see their lives. And that's what the book is about.
And do you think that because more and more this is becoming a virtual world, that people are shying away from one-on-one contact and just prefer the internet? Yes,
it's very, very scary. It's an excellent question. There's actually even a theory that autism is essentially a brain's evolutionary reaction to a digital universe, that we as a society become more and more digital, more and more binary, and less implicit in our dealings with each other, that the autistic brain is more capable of accepting that kind of reality than people who like face-to-face contact and human contact. It's a very scary thought, because I think we are seeing a trend in society where we're very isolated. We're very hyper-connected, and yet we're also extremely, extremely isolated from each other. And as a neurologist, I can tell you that some of the technologies like virtual technologies really have a very profound negative effect on our brains.
They say that our muscles have memory as well. When we say the brain, is it physically limited to that area, or do we actually feel things, think things? Kind of weird word to say think when it's not the brain. But I mean, does our whole body somehow play a role in this?
Of course, 100%. Every cell has memory. So there is muscle memory, there's heart memory, there's brain memory. And what that really means is that we act based in accordance with our histories, right? Our histories are embedded in ourselves. Even our ancestral history is an amazing study that's shown that the great-grandchildren of Holocaust survivors still have genetic changes from the trauma that they themselves did not experience.
Wow. Gosh. Wow, that is amazing. Gosh. Yeah. All right, there are so many more things I would love to talk to you about, but I guess I'll have to get the book. The time is out. Dr. J. Lombard, thank you. The book is called Mind of God. How do we get the book? Do you have a website?
I have a website. It's drjlombard.com. That's easy to remember. It's also available on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And just thank you so much for allowing me to be on your show today. I appreciate you listeners listening in.
Thank you. It was definitely worth the time. I wish we had more time. Thank you, Doctor. We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio, I'm Paul Stevens. The Attorneys General of Maryland and the District of Columbia planning a noon news conference to announce what they call a major lawsuit against President Trump. Meantime, the president's daughter and advisor Ivanka Trump asked about